Hello, welcome back. I'm Savalian. I make videos about games, development, and creativity, and I think this is my first actual devlog of this year. I've done a couple of tutorial style breakdowns of specific things that I've worked on this year, but I don't think I've given a real update of the progress on my game since December. So today we're going to talk about what I've been working on for the past 3 months and how my little game is going. If you're new here, first of all, welcome. Second, I'll give you just a little background about myself. I've been working on a cute little fishing game in Godot since, I don't know, like October last year, 2023, sometime around then. And before that, I used the Unity engine for years, for over 10 years. And after their big upheaval late last year, I decided to switch over to Godot with a fresh new project. So far, I have faced a little bit of a learning curve, getting used to Godot and all the ways that it's different from Unity, but in general, I'm very pleased with my decision. I find Godot very easy to work with once I figure out what I'm doing, and I'm having a lot of fun, and it's even got some things that I either didn't use in Unity or didn't know about in Unity that I'm using in Godot, and it's been really nice. Now, about my game. My little fishing game is, first of all, still very much being designed. I'm going more loose with this one. In the past, I've done some very rigid design documents, and it's kind of resulted in long projects that kind of got off the rails a little bit. So in this one, I'm keeping things fun and interesting for me as the developer, leaving some room for it to grow and change. But what I do know is that it is a fishing game at its heart. And then I have some other ideas that I want to work in there too. So the first thing I did for this project, after I made like a character and a fishing rod and got some basic animation set up, is that I spent a lot of time working on a procedural island generation system. This is not something I had done before. I made a few videos on the proc gen, how I did it and what it looks like and how it works. So you can go watch those if you would like to. From there, I moved on to the core game mechanic, the fishing itself. I wanted to make sure I had something solid at the core of the game so that then I could expand it outward and make sure that the basic part of the game is fun, because that was one of the biggest problems with my last game, is that I spent so much time sort of building up infrastructure, so to speak, about like all these different things that the game could do, that I never actually made the game part fun. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone but me, but I'm starting with the fun part this time. I'm getting the core of it really focused on. So I started by adding in fishing nodes, which are points on the island that can spawn in fish. Right now they look like these expanding rings. I definitely want to rework the visuals on these, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. And then I got the fishing system, the feature, to the point where the player can walk up to a node. It detects that you're next to it, and it sort of selects that node. You can cast the fishing rod by pressing a button. Press another button to reel the fish in. Eventually there's going to be a little mini game here, but I still need to work on that. And then you receive a fish. And at first there was no physical fish, it was just in code. Just a code fish object was logged, basically. I don't even have an inventory yet. So I started with that, and then I modeled up a cute little fish and started fleshing out a system to generate different kinds of fish. And I also have a video on how I'm generating these random, sort of procedurally generated different kinds of fish. So I'm going to skim through some of this, but I have very recently made some exciting changes to this system, which I'll talk about. First, I knew I wanted to play with blend shapes, also known as shape keys. They basically let you use one mesh, but adjust values to tweak its shape. So I added some blend shapes that let me make the fish shorter or longer, and some that let me adjust the width of the fish in a few different places. And then also very recently, I added a blend shape that lets you adjust the nose of the fish, which I've affectionately called the snoot blend shape. And all blend shapes are stored as numbers between 0 and 1, and you can blend from the default state up to the fully activated state. And that's why they're called blend shapes, because they can move smoothly between the two different shapes. And the trick to these, since I do have separate objects for the fins and tails, so I can swap out different meshes to create different sizes, is that I do need to have matching blend shapes on all the pieces. So like for example, if I make the fish body very long, the tail also needs to be positioned at the end, so it also needs to shift with that blend shape. And I talked a lot about this system in a previous video, so go ahead and watch that if you'd like to know more, or just look up, how to do blend shapes. I think they're a lot of fun, and I've never had a chance to use them in a game before, so I'm very excited. Now here's where things get exciting. I've talked a lot before about my preferred texturing method. For years and years, I have used a method called lazy UV unwrapping, where you essentially unwrap specific faces of a mesh onto color swatches in a texture. It's kind of like a texture atlas of different colors. And then at runtime, you can slide the UVs to different positions on the texture to change the color. This method I've used in the past, primarily because it's extremely easy for me to do when I'm modeling, and it gets me a style and a look that I like, but also because it can be more performant than loading up, for example, a bunch of different textures into memory, or swapping materials and shaders at runtime. It has served me really well in the past, and I will likely continue to use this method for a lot of other models in my game. However, for the fish, I encountered a limitation. I wanted a way to add patterns to certain fish. A lot of fish have stripes or spots or little splotchy patterns like a koi fish, and this was really challenging to do with this method. Typically for UV unwrapping, if you want like patterns, you either have to model them or you have to have very large swatches, and you have to unwrap extremely carefully so you don't end up with a bunch of seams, which kind of defeats the purpose of the lazy UV unwrapping, because it does create a lot more work. It doesn't really save you much compared to texture painting. My first attempt, I actually, avert your ears, I created a separate mesh in the shape of the pattern and loaded it in as an object over the top of the body, which I then used the same blend shapes and UV sliding to get it to match up with the fish. And this created a lot of work for me because, like with the fins, I had to make sure that all the blend shapes matched up as the fish body changed so that the stripes would expand and such. And so, not a good solution. I started looking for other ways to do it, and I eventually landed on Godot's overlay material. This is a material that their 3D objects have. It pretty much does what it says. It supports alpha or transparency, and you can basically put it on top of the 3D object's main material. Now, I still need to do some investigation on the performance implications of this method, because I have used the lazy UV texturing for so long. I'm just not as familiar with like the normal way that people do things. And for basically the first time in my game dev career, I actually unwrapped something and got the UVs tidy on like a larger texture, and I painted a texture for my fish. I painted a body texture, a texture for the fins, and a texture for the tail. And then I created an overlay texture for each kind of pattern that I want to have. I just did 3 to start. There will likely be many more. But these are enough to get some variety in the game. And the really nice thing is, with this system, literally all I have to do is open up the 3D model, paint a new overlay texture onto the model, export the texture file, and it's ready to go. I don't need to make any changes to the mesh. I don't need to adjust any blend shapes. I don't need to do anything. I just have to paint that texture and it's ready. So, instead of changing colors by UV sliding, as I've been doing, I am instead changing the material's albedo property. This is as easy as getting a reference to the mesh's material, setting that property to a color, and updating the material. This makes the color system a lot more flexible because I can literally set the colors to any color that exists and not just a color that's on my texture swatches. So that's nice. And again, I haven't properly investigated the performance. I don't know if there's going to be a problem rendering many fish with this method, or maybe it'll be perfectly fine. I just have to research it. I have to look into it. I have to do some tests. But for now, it works. It gets me the visuals, the appearance that I want for the fish. And because I'm able to use more of the texture for the details, I can get a better resolution, and the overlay patterns just look a lot better than they did otherwise. I've also updated my fish test scene so that I can plug in values for all these different fish properties and just generate, just spam the fish button. And every time I get a different fish that is randomly generated within these properties. It's really fun to play with, and it's going to help me, I think, narrow down what values I need to get like a certain species of fish. That's going to go into the design of the final game. So that's the current state of the fishes. I did a lot of that work pretty recently, so we're going to jump back in time a little bit to talk about some of the other things I worked on. I did spend a few days trying to figure out how to get a fishing line in the game. Just drawing a line from the end of the fishing pole to where the fishing pole was cast. I never got this working. I got really frustrated because I got a few different attempts almost working, but just not quite. It was just rendering weird. I tried using some of Godot's like physics joints. That didn't really work. And in the end, instead of digging into this deeper, I just decided to leave it. I have an idea, like sort of a lore gameplay idea that may render this irrelevant. I just need to work through that a little bit more. But for now, I'm just not having a fishing line. It's fine. Next, I did a lot of work on the nodes themselves. Previously, they would spawn like a random number of fishes, but you couldn't see them. They were just represented in code. And so the first thing was to add the fish model, now that I worked so hard getting them looking cute and being customizable. And the first few sessions where I worked on this feature, it was adorable and silly, because before I added in the movement and the rotation, I just spawned the fishes in at their original rotation, which was facing up. And so I had all these fishes that looked like they were poking up out of the water to say hi, and I enjoyed that immensely. I worked on some code so that each fishing node has like a set of fish that it can spawn, and it will randomly create those fish until it's at capacity. I'm going to go in soon and update this so that it uses a weighted system, kind of like how loot tables typically work, where some fishes are more rare than others, but I haven't gotten to that yet. Next, I wanted the fish to move, to swim around in the water underneath the node, and for this I had to learn some things about Godot. One way to move things smoothly from one point to another is by just like calculating the differences and applying them in the process function. So like updating the position based on the delta time, and that'll move it and it will appear to animate smoothly. But another way to do it is to use Godot's tween class, and I use this for the result phase of fishing. So when the player has caught the fish and they hold it up, I needed to get the fish from the water to their hand. And the way that I did this is to get a reference to the node tree, call create tween, and then set the transition type and speed. And then once you have that tween object, you can call tween property. You pass in the node you want to interpolate the property of, the name of the property, so in this case is the position, and then the new value that you want that to be. And it just sort of works. So that's really handy. I feel like I'm gonna use these in a lot of different places. It's gonna make things pretty easy. And the last notable thing I've done since the last update is I started working on some actual game UI. I had not really used Godot's UI system very much yet, and I still have to do some learning here, but it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that hard to get up and running. The part that really got me was the theming system. I was having a hard time figuring out how to style elements the way that I want. My issues ultimately came down to not knowing enough about the UI nodes themselves to understand which things I had to theme and which things I potentially wanted to add an override for. Basically, each node that Godot has some theme properties that it takes from the parent theme, and then they also may contain elements within themselves that are themed. So for example, I had wanted to change the background of a panel container, and I didn't realize at first that the actual thing that has a style that shows the background is a panel element within the panel container, and it's the style box property that then has like the background color and things like that. It's not super obvious if you're just poking around what exactly you need to style for something like this, so I think it's just a learning process, and as I work with the system more and as I try to build out more complicated UIs, I'll get used to it and I'll get to the level that I was with Unity's system, which was definitely not easier to use, though the UI toolkit was based on HTML and CSS, so it was a little more familiar than what Godot's got going on. So just a little bit more practice, I think. And all I've built with the UI is the little panel that pops up and shows you which fish you caught. And like I said, it's very simple. It doesn't really look that good because I'm still learning how the theming works. And that's where we're at. You can fish in this game, you catch the fish, it tells you what it is, and you can just keep going. That's all I've got. I have been really busy this past month, especially with a lot of other things, but I am really proud of the progress I've made here, especially since my full-time job has been really intense at the start of this year. It's impressive to me, knowing everything I've got on my plate, that I was able to get this much done. And my big art challenge that I've been working on, the alphabet superset, is almost done. I have finished W, I'm working on X. I should be able to finish it up on time the first week of April. And then after that, I'm hoping to free up some time to do some more game development work and take a little step back from the art practice, which I've been doing, several hours each week on for the past 6 months or so. And so hopefully I'll be able to get some of these game updates out more frequently. They'll be a little beefier, but I'm still working on planning out Q2, so we'll see if that's actually how things pan out. And let me know in the comments, just a little fun question, if you like fishing games or games that have fishing, what is your favorite part? For me, I am really drawn to trying to catch all the different kinds of fish. I like to catch them all, the Pokemon method, especially the rare or the pretty ones. So let me know in the comments. But that's all I have for now. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you'd like to see more, because I'll be back soon with another video, and I hope to see you there. Bye bye.